Everything we've done here in this class, the readings in the book, in the textbook, and also everything that has been posted on Blackboard, and all the handouts I may have given, and that sort of stuff. So everything should be, posted there and in the book. So it covers files 1 through 5. Also including 14, but frankly there won't be many questions about files 14, but 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So we're basically covering the introductory stuff, and I will actually do it right now, go over quickly what kinds of things will be covered in the midterm. So starting from file 1, we talked about description and prescription, and you would need to know those kinds of things. What does it mean for a linguistic point of view that something is ungrammatical? It's a different concept than from the layperson's point of view. They tend to think that, if you have a double negative in a sentence, then it's ungrammatical. But from the linguistic point of view, it's not if a native speaker says that. So if it's just in a different dialect of English, it is grammatical. And we talked about that extensively. So those kinds of go over those things, the design features of language and so on, that related to chapter or files 1. Then so know what descriptive and prescriptive do, and but also know what the kinds of rules, because English has different dialects, and we are looking of the dialect that is kind of like regarded as the quote-unquote power dialect, even though it's no better linguistically than any other dialect. That's the standard English dialect. So we're looking at those rules. So I may be asking something like, what sentence follows the rules of standard written English or standard English? So that's also a concern to think about, that even though all dialects are equal from the linguistic point of view, I may be asking what would be against the rules or according to the rules of standard English. So just a couple of things of that. We have been talking about morphology. So I may give you words with a morpheme in that word underlined, and ask what kind of morpheme this is, and you would have the 4 choices as in the multiple choice question. So just choose the correct one. Always with multiple choice, you probably learned this already in junior high, that it's important to read all the possibilities, because we're looking for the best answer, not just an answer that may be correct, because sometimes the answer might be all the above or none of the above, or both A and B, or so always read the instructions very carefully, and I'm sure that's a habit that you have already formed. So not much. The focus actually will be, there will be a lot of focus on syntax mostly, and files 5, but also phonology, phonetics, phonology, morphology. I'm not going to be asking you about, because you have already done this, the different phones, how they can be described. We did the articulatory phonology, so that's not going to be a focus here. But I might give you don't have to draw a syntax tree, a phrase structure tree in this test, but I will give you a tree. And then I will give you 4 sentences, and I will ask you which of these sentences would fit into this tree. So that's kind of on that level. You would need to be familiar with the phrase structure trees that files 5 show in abundance. Know how we identify, how our brains can figure out what a noun is, what a verb is, and adjective and adverb. And that is based on two different kinds of criteria. Where in the sentence a word appears in relation to other words, that's the syntactic criterion. So if a word is preceded by the, this, an, five, what is going to be the lexical category of that word? If you have a or the or this or that, these or those in front of a word, what is the lexical category of that word?
Determiner.
It's a noun, yes, and that is because those words that I listed, they are determiners, and determiners signal that a noun is coming. Okay. In the same way, if you have an auxiliary like he will be to Houston tomorrow. So what is the beep? He will, he must, he should, he can. What follows those words? A verb, exactly. So that's the syntactic criterion. We look at where in the sentence something appears. But then we can also, in addition, and that's what our brains kind of do, the brain does the same, these two things at the same time. We also look at the morphology of the word. If it's a verb, if it takes a verbal ending, one of those 4 inflectional endings that verbs take, if it takes the plural and the possessive, then it's going to be a noun. So it is how a word behaves, both syntactically and morphologically. That's what determines what its lexical category or part of speech is. So its behavior does that. So if we have a sentence like she had a run in her stocking. Run is not a verb, it is what? She had a run in her stocking. It's a noun, right? Because it's preceded by a determiner. So it behaves like or she had several runs in her stockings. So several runs, now we have an S, which is the plural form, and that shows that this gotta be probably a noun. Of course, he runs or she runs, then run is not a noun, but it's a verb, yes. So we need to look at how a word behaves, both syntactically and morphologically. And in written English, what and spoken in English too, what is sometimes a little bit complicated is that many of the inflectional morphemes, not many, but some of the inflectional morphemes are homophonous with other morphemes. So they are. It's the same. It sounds the same. The plural z or s sounds the same as the third person singular present tense inflectional morpheme for verbs. So we have a run around Huntsville, a run in the stocking, or he runs, she runs. So there's the same ending, but you have to. So you also have to look at not only the mechanically at what's at the end of the word, but also what that inflectional ending is, or it may be even a morphological ending. Derivational ending. For instance, we have the er. We have a word like teacher, ending in er. Then we have a word like taller. 2 different ERs, because the ER in teacher is a derivational morpheme that derives a noun from a verb teach. And then the ER in taller is an inflectional ending that just inflects the adjective tall, taller, the tallest. So just keep that in mind, and you'll be fine. So I do want you to know the basic lexical categories: adjectives, adverbs, nouns, verbs. Those are the form class words, and then also the function class words, determiners, auxiliaries, conjunctions, prepositions, pronouns. So just kind of like do a basic overview. This is basically 8th grade grammar. So I will give you a sentence and underline stuff in that sentence, underline words or parts of words, and I'll ask, what is this? Of the following 4 possibilities. So it's relatively simple in that sense. But about adverbs, for instance, that they how do let's talk about adjectives first. So nouns, verbs, adjectives. Adjectives behave morphologically so that they get the ER and EST ending, or they are compared with more and most. Okay, like more intelligent, the most intelligent, but smarter and the smartest. So basically in English, if an adjective has a foreign origin and is longer, 3 syllables long and longer, it's always compared with more and most. So that's called a periphrastic comparison. It's not an inflectional ending like the ER and EST are. So adjectives, that's how they behave morphologically. Syntactically, they behave so that they go in between 2 different categories. They go between determiners and nouns. So determiner comes in front of the adjective, then a noun follows. Of course, we can have an adjective as the subject complement in the sentence, like he is smart. Smart is not preceded by a determiner and not followed by a noun, even though it could be he is a smart student. But he is smart, we have an adjective there at the place of a subject complement after a be verb, after a linking verb. So adverbs then are typically derived from adjectives, and they many of them take the ly ending, but not all of them. So we can say he is quick, but he runs quickly. So that is a pattern, but it's not always, because we can say he is fast and he runs fast. So we don't say fastly. That would not be English. So the ly ending is often an indication of an adverb, but not always, because we also have adjectives that end in ly. Like, for instance, he is friendly. It's an adjective now. But he smiles in a friendly way. That would be a whole phrase, prepositional phrase, that would do the job of the adverb, because we wouldn't say friendlyly, we would say he smiles in a friendly way. Okay, and so I might give you one of those silly sentences that we've been working on and ask, what is this word in this sentence? Is it a noun, verb, adjective, or an adverb? And what's the reason why you can figure it out? We have, and we're going to be looking at your book, where you have the list of the rules, the syntactic rules. I'm not requiring an active knowledge of that. If you want to gain that kind of a knowledge, sign up for 373, where we talk in more detail about grammatical rules and how sentences are produced. But here this is an introduction to linguistics, so we're doing an introduction to all these different areas. So we're not digging very deep here, but I do want, I would give you, will give you actually, a kind of a question like, Okay, here's a sentence. What are the syntactic rules that have been used to derive that sentence? Like, for instance, here. Fluffy is a cat. Okay. So the first rule that we use is, of course, for every sentence, it's the sentence it consists of a noun phrase and a verb phrase. So this is the first rule, the rule that describes all the sentences of English and most languages, probably. So the sentence consists of a noun phrase and a verb phrase. So what is the noun phrase here in Fluffy is a cat? Fluffy, and I misspelled Fluffy's name, sorry Fluffy. So that would be a noun phrase. Yes, and then what is the verb phrase? Is a cat, yes, so that's the verb phrase. And then for this sentence to be derived, we also need to know what the rule for the noun phrase is and what the rule of the verb phrase is. So noun phrase consists, in this case, we need to have a rule that covers both Fluffy, and then we have another noun phrase in this sentence. What is that other noun phrase? A cat, yes. So both of those need to be covered with the rule when we open up the, we'll take this down so that you can see that. There we go. So a cat is another NP. So we have to write a rule that covers both Fluffy and the cat. And that rule is, of course, there must be a noun, and there is a noun in Fluffy, that's the head noun. There is a noun in a cat, that's cat. But they're different in the sense that a cat has also something in front of it, and that is the indefinite article determiner, right? And we put it in, when we put it in parentheses, it covers both Fluffy and a cat, because it means that it's an optional category. When we look at Fluffy, there's only the head noun. When we look at a cat, there's both the determiner and the head noun. Does that make sense? Okay, then the verb phrase. In this case, the verb phrase is a cat. So we have a verb, right? And then we have a complement for that verb, or an argument, like your book writes quite a bit. If there's text, a lot of text about argument versus adjunct. So an argument is something that is necessary for the structure to be complete. They are also called complements, not complements, but complements. They complete the sentence. So we couldn't end the sentence here, Fluffy is. We have to say what Fluffy is, so cat. And that is a noun phrase. So in this case, we have a verb phrase which consists of a verb and a noun phrase. This here is a linking verb. We have 4 different kinds of verbs. We have transitive verbs, intransitive verbs, linking verbs, and a be verb with an obligatory adverbial. Like Fluffy is on the sofa. On the sofa is the adverbial, giving the place where Fluffy is. So those, and I've made I think there are notes about that. So look at the PowerPoints and look at all the links, because I made notes of the 4 different kinds of verbs: transitive, intransitive, linking, and be as with a mandatory adverbial. So these 3 rules describe the whole sentence. So if I give you these 3 rules, then I have different kinds of sentences, you will just find the sentence which matches with the 3 rules that I've given. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Then about constituents, and I will talk more about constituents. Syntactic frames, you've got in your book, you've got quite a bit on syntactic frames. So for instance, here's the syntactic frame for what category? What is that frame? Determiner comes before, then comes this beep, and then a noun follows. So what is this? What is the lexical category for which this is the syntactic frame? Adjective, yeah. And what is this frame for?
Adverb.
That would be an adverb, yes. Adverbs usually come at the end of the sentence. Let's look at one more. We have what would that be? It's followed by an adjective and a noun. What is that? Happy girl, little boy, angry man. Determiner. Yes. Okay. So that's the syntactic frames, just to know the concept. When you study for the test, and you probably noticed that during your time as a student, that if a test is open book, it doesn't mean that you don't have to study beforehand. Because if you don't study, then you end up using that 2 hours that you will have to just, looking for the answers. But when you have studied already, then you are much better off. About the phonological processes, go over those. In the book, everything that is bolded, it's good to make sure that you understand what it means. Natural classes, also look over that. We talked a little bit about that, did some exercises. Allophones, phones, phonemes, make sure you understand what those mean. Morpheme, allomorph, and then I'll give you a whole bunch of sentences where, as I already mentioned, I underline something, I ask you, what is this word? And then you would choose the correct answer. Okay, and then you have 2 hours to do it, and it opens at midnight or Friday morning. So midnight Thursday or midnight between Thursday and Friday. So it opens then. I mean, I'll keep it open for 24 hours. You can start it anytime during 24 hours. But when you start, you have only 2 hours to do it, 120 minutes. So do it on one sitting. Get your coffee cup and make yourself comfortable and enjoy the process. But it's doable easily within 2 hours. But don't leave it till the last moment. So start at least, if you're a morning person, you're fine. Some people are night people. So don't start it later than 10 p.m. because you want to give yourself that 2 hours to get it done. And yes. Then these are all multiple choice questions, 50 multiple choice questions, each worth a half a point. So those are worth 25 points. The whole test is worth 30. The 5 remaining points come from a transcription in IPA, and it's not long, it's just like a sentence. And you will need to write that in regular English standard orthography. So use the capital letter and put the period at the end, and then write it as you would write a standard English sentence. Okay. So that's it. Any questions? Yes.
Will we be able to access the other tests?
Say what?
Will we be able to access the other tests to study, or
The
like, see what
previous
we got
test?
wrong on the other tests?
No.
Like go back into the tests we already took and see what we got.
I don't think so. Did you get that link? Because I emailed it.
Yeah, she did. She emailed something and like it was like how we can get it back and like review it one
So
more
there's
time.
an email for you. Well, I mean, it's open book, open notes, so you have already taken that test. So, but this is a different test. Yes.
Are all the questions from the old tests, or are there like
No.
new questions? No. Okay.
No. Maybe maybe one or two, but no, it's not. It's not. This is pretty much. I mean, there may be some overlap. I frankly don't remember. Okay, let's talk about constituents a little bit. Because this is most likely a new thing. You probably didn't do this in 8th grade grammar. So here's a sentence. This morning, people from the office moved that extremely heavy desk into the hall. And let's try to identify what the constituents in this sentence are. Those constituents, they are the semantically coherent units, which are also syntactic units at the same time. The groups of words. But first, what is the largest constituent in this sentence? What's the largest constituent in the sentence? Always. It's a semantically coherent unit and it's a syntactic unit, so what is it? It's the entire sentence, right? Because a sentence is always a syntactic unit and it means something, so it's also semantic. It has a proposition, as pragmatists would say. It makes a statement. So here this is a statement. This morning, people from the office moved that extremely heavy desk into the hall. A sentence. That's the biggest constituent, okay? And what are the smallest constituents then? The individual words, yes. So let's just really quickly label these individual words and then we'll look at the intermediate constituents. So this is what? Morning. People. Yeah. From? What does P stand for? Preposition. The? Yes. Office. Noun. Moved. There's our verb. That. Determiner. Extremely. Adverb, right?
Wouldn't it be adjective?
What is this? What is this?
That's just noun.
That's the noun. And what comes before the noun? If it's not the determiner. The determiner is here.
Adjective.
Heavy, what is heavy? Adjective, yes. So it's modifying, it's a pre-modifier for the noun. It's telling us what kind of a desk, heavy desk. And then this adverb is telling how heavy. So the most common adverb is very, very heavy. These can be also referred to as qualifiers. So how heavy? But I'm going to list it here as an adverb. Well, qualifier, that would work too. And then into, preposition, the hall. Yeah? Okay, so this doesn't really help us much to understand what the structure of the sentence is, because what we have only is this string, what is, we can call a terminal string: determiner, noun, noun, preposition, determiner, noun, verb, determiner, adverb, adjective, noun, preposition, determiner, noun. It doesn't help us, so we have to figure out these, but we have now identified the individual words, what categories they represent. But it's not just that this linear structure or linear order is not important, because we can't just shovel these words around, rearrange them. They have to appear in English, they have to appear in a certain order according to the grammar of English. So we can say morning this, from office the, people, that, moved, the, hall. So we can't do that. They have to appear in a linear order. But the linear order is not everything. We also have to look at the hierarchical structure of the sentence, which basically means the same thing as the constituent structure. And when we identify constituents, it's easy to identify the largest constituent. It's the sentence as a whole. Smallest constituents, the individual words. No big deal there, easy peasy. But when we have to identify the intermediate constituents, these are the phrases inside the sentence, like prepositional phrase, noun phrase, adjective phrase, or adverb phrase, and verb phrase, obviously. So those phrases are the intermediate constituents. And let's try to look at this sentence. Its structure in terms of which words belong together and form phrases within the larger sentence. So we are looking at the hierarchical structure or constituent structure. So if I ask you, we have this sentence identified here as the largest constituent. If I ask you to divide the sentence into two of its most important parts, where do you draw the line? People from the office, what kind of a constituent is that? What kind of a phrase is it? Yes. It's a noun phrase because its most important word is office. That's the head of the noun phrase. No, erase. What is the most important word? People, right? People. And then we have it post-modified. What kind of people? Not just people, but specific people. People from the office. So here we have from the office a phrase within a phrase, the onion layered structure of the sentence. And what is this phrase, from the office? It's not a noun phrase now, it is what kind of phrase? Starts from a preposition, hint, hint. Prepositional phrase, thanks. So it's a prepositional phrase, which is a modifier, post modifier for people from the office. Okay, so within the prepositional phrase, we have another phrase, which is a noun phrase, right? I need a different color. So that's an NP. The office is a noun phrase. So people from the office is our noun phrase, which has to have the head noun. It doesn't now have a determiner in front of it, even though it could. The people from the office, but in this case it's post-modified by a prepositional phrase. Of course, we wouldn't necessarily have to have the prepositional phrase here, but in this case we do. So there's the description for that particular noun phrase. And then the prepositional phrase from the office has the following structure: preposition and noun phrase. Now in this case we don't put either of those in parentheses, because a prepositional phrase of course has to have a preposition as its head, and it always has to have a noun phrase as its complement, or as its, well, the argument that completes the prepositional phrase. So let's go back to this morning here. It's a little bit misleading because most often the sentences, they start with the subject noun phrase. In this case, people from the office. What is this morning doing here? What kind of a phrase is it first? What is it for? Consists of a determiner and noun. Sounds familiar? We could have. It's a noun phrase, yes. It's the noun phrase. What is it answering? What kind of a question is this noun phrase answering? When did the people from the office move that extremely heavy desk into the hall? The answer would be this morning. Now, it is in the form of a noun phrase, but it's actually doing the same thing as an adverb would do. Therefore, for its function in the sentence, we call it an adverbial. It's not an adverb, because it's not, if we had today, or yesterday, or tomorrow, then those would be adverbs, and they would also be adverbials. But if a phrase functions in the same way as an adverb usually does, we call it an adverbial for its function. So it's like an adverb, but it's not an adverb because this is a noun phrase, but it's doing the same job. This kind of an adverbial, we can also call it an adjunct because we can leave it out. It is moved to the beginning of the sentence from the end of the sentence, if we think about the underlying structure, syntactic structure of the sentence. So adverbs and adverbials, in whatever form they come, they are typically understood to be at the end of the sentence, but they can be moved around. That's one of the syntactic features of adverbials. Groups of words that behave like adverbs, they can be moved around. Okay, so here it has moved to the beginning. So my next question is, if we have identified what the subject noun phrase is, then what is the VP here? What all things belong to the verb phrase in this sentence? would be just everything else minus people from the office. So we leave people from the office out, and everything else will be the verb phrase. The verb phrase is moved that extremely heavy desk into the hall this morning. So that's a long VP. And of course, a VP must have a verb, and the verb here is moved, right? So that moved forms a constituent in that sentence. We would call it the main verb phrase. Okay, because the whole verb phrase is that the entire rest of the sentence minus the subject noun phrase. Then what is followed by moved? Moved here is not just a verb, it happens to be a transitive verb, which means that it has something following it as an argument, as a complement, something that has to complete it. We can say people from the office moved. Well, that would mean that they would go to a different place, but if we have move in the sense of a transitive verb, it has to get a direct object. And what is the direct object of moved here? That extremely heavy desk. Good. So what is the form of the direct object? What kind of a phrase is that? What kind of a constituent is that direct object constituent? That extremely heavy desk. Noun phrase, yes, because that's the most important word there. So the head gives the name to the entire phrase. And in this case, the noun phrase consists of a determiner, then it has that adjective here, adjective phrase before the noun, AP, adjective phrase, and then it has a noun, and then we have to leave the PP in parentheses here to cover also this noun phrase, people from the office. So people from the office, but that extremely heavy desk. That one didn't have the PP at the end there. So which of these categories in the parentheses appears with any particular phrase, noun phrase? That gives us the infinite choice of having different kinds of noun phrases, right? So that's the beauty of it. And now, if you look at that extremely heavy desk, in this particular noun phrase constituent, we have also two words that belong more together. You would not say that that extremely is a constituent, but what is a constituent? Yeah, heavy, extremely heavy would be a constituent here. And which one is a more important word there? Which is the head?
Heavy.
Yes, heavy is the more important word. So this is an AP, and we're getting another rule. An AP must have an adjective, and it can have an adverb in front of it as a qualifier of the adjective. So when you have an adjective, it's actually an adjective phrase consisting of an adjective, and it may have like very heavy, extremely heavy, humongously heavy, and so on. So it can be qualified. The heavy can be qualified. One more big constituent there at the end here is into the hall. And what kind of a constituent is this? Did I hear a prepositional phrase?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's a prepositional phrase. It starts with a preposition, and because it's a prepositional phrase, we look at this rule. It has that preposition into, and then it has a noun phrase. The noun phrase is the hall. That's an NP inside the prepositional phrase. So, okay, the point here is that we have these, we don't just put a word after another word. We put phrases after other phrases. And those phrases are the constituents. And sometimes it's kind of like difficult to figure out if you, please look at your book For ambiguity, for instance, if we have a sentence like she shot the man with a rifle. Okay, so here's a sentence. She shot the man with a rifle. Now, this sentence is what we call a structurally ambiguous sentence. We can have ambiguity so that, you know, a word is ambiguous. That's lexical ambiguity, but a sentence can also be structurally ambiguous. And what are the two meanings here? She shot the man with a rifle. Where's the ambiguity in this sentence? Two meanings, right? So either she has the rifle, and she's sorry about the violence of this example. She shoots the man with a rifle, or she shot the man who had the rifle. The man had the rifle, and she shot the man with her Kluger or clock or Mauser or whatever, which she pulled from her handbag. Sorry about the bloody example, but anyway, the point is syntactic. So it's here. Is it the man with the rifle, which is a constituent? It can be the noun phrase constituent. And then she shot him. We can use the substitution test. I've listed the tests here, and your book does a good job in explaining these tests. She shot him. That would be the substitution by a pro-form test, in this case a pronoun. The other meaning is that she shot the man. Now the man is the constituent, it's the noun phrase. And then we have with a rifle. How did she shoot the man? And here we have this prepositional phrase now modifying not the man. Like in this case, of course, the prepositional phrase is still there. It's identical on the surface, but the prepositional phrase is modifying the man. Here, the prepositional phrase is modifying how she shot. And this is kind of like the beauty of understanding the syntax and constituent structure of the sentences, because you can understand ambiguity, for instance. Just really quickly, these are the tests you can use if you are not sure if the meaning is this or this. What is an intermediate constituent? So, ability to stand alone. How did she shoot the man? The answer would be with a rifle. Or, here the question, if the constituent in the sentence is, if the intention is that it's the man with the rifle and she shoots it with, her pistol, then the question would be, who did she shoot? The man with a rifle. So ability to stand alone or answer the question, is one of the good tests to test which words belong together. Another thing is the substitution by a pro-form test. She shot the man violently or whatever. We could put another word there. That's not all of these tests work equally well for all sentences. Movement is another test. This morning, in our original big sentence, a long sentence, is a constituent because it can be moved. It can appear either in the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence. Deletion is another test. If you can leave out this morning, for instance, it would be a good sentence still, then that would be an additional test to see that it's a constituent. And clefting, it was the man with the rifle that he shot. or it was with the rifle that she shot the man. So that's the so-called clefting test. So you can review those in your book. And thanks for listening, participating. Go study. Have a good day.